3. You're listening to 87.1 Caroline Radio, KCGN Bakersfield, and Blind Advocate Radio. This is Aaron Richmond, the host of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people, where we talk about issues in the blindness community. You can find Aaron's Opinion really almost anywhere you would get a podcast, or on Twitter, on YouTube, and we're on Patreon. A very good afternoon to you, everybody who's listening, and a very good afternoon to Carrie Morales, the host of Live Accessible, a YouTube channel. A couple weeks ago, you posted a video in our support group on Facebook about the importance of basically educating the sighted community. This is a big issue for me. I mean, I'm a teacher by trade. When I'm not podcasting, I'm teaching. And educating people is a kind of a constant project. Why don't you kind of walk our listeners through, if they have not seen that particular video, about educating people about the different experiences you've had, where people maybe came up to you in a yoga class and started asking questions. If you could kind of walk us through the video, I think that would be really good. So go from there.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on here, Aaron. Actually, the reason why I made that video is I have been in the situation, as well as watching social media with a lot of different posts from so many different people, basically venting out their frustrations on why the sighted community reacts to them in a certain way, or people misunderstanding and making just judgments about other people. And so I was thinking about myself, including myself, because there's those times where you just make a snap decision, and when somebody says something to you, that you just walk away, you get frustrated, you get mad. But I think it's really important to take a breath and stop and think about what your reaction is, because what is the goal? The goal should be, is it to make yourself feel better? Because if that's all it is, well, then go ahead. You can vent, you can rant, you can, hit them with a cane. And sometimes some people warrant that when they're being just completely rude or completely offensive. But there are times where they're just asking a question, or they really are ignorant. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily their fault, but they probably have never seen a blind person. Or it could be also that what they have seen has led them to believe that all blind people are a certain way, whether the person that they met before had another disability, or maybe they were just having a bad day as well. And I think that's why it's so important for us, if we really want people to change, if we want the mindset of the sighted community to change, we actually have to actively speak to them about our experiences and what it really means to be blind, and that blindness is a spectrum. We have to share all our grievances and our frustrations in a nice way to them, so that they can realize what it really means to be blind. I guess that's it in a nutshell.
Right. I hear what you're saying. I think that it depends on the situation.
Exactly.
And this is easier said than done, and this is part of the problem, you see, because the truth of it, at least in my life, and you don't know me, as I was saying before I pushed record, I'd be happy to talk to you a little bit later today, maybe after I eat dinner or get my work done later, to kind of circle back and get back to you with more information about me. But I have found, I'll tell you for the first time, that I have found that usually if people are asking questions, it does depend on the question. But in this day and age, if they have to ask a question, the truth of it is that usually they're too lazy to listen to the answer. and that if people are asking questions, it's not necessarily to learn, it's often to get a reaction out of the person you're asking the question about. For example, people know me in the community. People know me in the podcasting community, and I'm a very abrupt person. I am someone who, although I am a kind person, I do not come across that way publicly. So people oftentimes, occasionally, say silly things or make silly comments on videos simply to see if I'm willing to react to them. So I have found that the people who truly care are going to be the people who participate in podcasting, the people who come to podcasts, the people who guest on my podcast, people like you, like so many others, are the types of people who care and who I will be willing to have an educated and informed discussion with. The vast majority of sighted people, I must tell you, truly either they need to research it for themselves, find out the answers for themselves, or they need to stop asking silly questions. Occasionally, someone asks me a good question, and I appreciate it. But more often, I'm finding that people are asking questions that they know are just silly, and that they know that if they ask enough of those silly questions, they can get a reaction.
But
So,
I, mhm.
yes, go ahead.
I think that that's the most important part. What kind of question they ask? Are they asking you something about blindness, or are they trying to get a reaction out of you? I mean, obviously,
Right.
when they're trying to get a reaction out of you, well, then you can respond accordingly. But when it's an actual genuine question that comes out of ignorance, I don't necessarily agree that all sighted people should already know or should research it themselves. Um, because a lot of them, I mean, they just wake up, they go to work, everybody they know is sighted, everything that they have experienced is in a sighted world. And so I don't think that everybody has had that exposure to somebody with a disability or somebody that is visually impaired or totally blind.
And maybe. However, there are many talented YouTubers, such as you, who apparently produce great videos about this topic. I view it as it is extremely easy to research what the facts are without even answering the questions. I don't know. Understand, I'm not at all dismissing your opinion at all. I'm just saying that I feel that at this point and in this day and age, I think that people need to do work, even put 1% effort forward to do some research about things. I mean, if you want to learn something on YouTube, just research it. It takes literally 2 seconds of your time to pull up information. You know, for example, I'll give you a example of it. For example, I love snakes. If I want to watch a video about snakes and keeping snakes as pets, I can research that literally within 30 seconds. Within 5 seconds, I can be connected with the best video for that topic. So, to the sighted community, don't tell me that you can't research things about blind people on YouTube, because there are many YouTubers on YouTube, many YouTubers who are speaking of redundancy, many YouTubers who are blind, who are much more famous and much more talented than I for sure, and have a huge following, and have probably covered the topic that you have the question about. That's all. That's what I'm saying. I want
I I agree.
I want people to ask questions, and I'm open to it. But I also want people, because if you ask a really good question, that would show me that you had done some research. If someone asks me a really informed question, then I appreciate it, because they're showing me that they're doing the research and thinking about it. But if they just ask a silly question, I'm starting to run out of patience for that. So
I agree. They
yeah.
can research it. It's very easy to find information, but when you are in a situation where you see something happening, I mean, most of the time people are not just going to pull out their phone and then start typing on YouTube. They'll probably tend to ask somebody the question before they, go on to their phone to do that. So
Right.
that's all I'm talking about. And
Sure,
it
sure. So can you paint a picture for our listener? Can you kind of give us a story about a time that someone asked you a really good question that you appreciated and kind of retell the story, if you will?
well, there's one situation where I do remember where a neighbor of mine, it was actually one of the first times that I met her, and me and my son were walking around the neighborhood, and she stepped up to me and she said something. I can't remember exactly what she asked me, but she said, "Would you like some help crossing the street?" And well, I told her, "No, thank you. I don't need help." And then she proceeded to ask what I am able to see and what I can't see. And then so from there, we started a dialogue about what visual impairment for me, how it affects me, and what I can and cannot do because she wasn't sure. So in those cases, I think it's very easy to realize when it comes from a genuine place from a person, or when it comes from a uh, not so nice way, because it, like, especially in high school and in college, I was faced with a lot of people, students especially, who say, because I have something called nystagmus, where my eyes move around uncontrollably, and there's no way that I can stop that, and it shakes basically. Um, and people would just ask me in the middle of a classroom, why are your eyes moving like that? I mean, obviously they have an audience. They have people that they want to point out a defect, or what they see as a defect in me. And obviously in a situation like that, it's probably not the most genuine question from them. They probably don't really care why, they just want to make fun of me. So, I mean, in those instances, it's very easy to see the difference.
Hmm. Hmm. It's really that's a let me unfold that a little further. I would be offended. I would be highly offended if someone asked me if I needed help crossing a street. So for me, as a blind person, that would be the end of the dialogue, not the beginning. That's it. That's interesting.
Mhm.
But if someone asks me a question, a medical question, I'm more comfortable talking about that.
Well,
So, yeah, yes,
I actually disagree. For me, I mean, it's my
good, good,
opinion
sure.
that, if somebody's asking in a nice way, if somebody needs help, then I don't see any problem with that. They're not pulling me across the road. They didn't grab my arm and just shuffle me along. They're just asking me, "Oh, do you need some help?" And I just kindly told her, "No, I don't need help." And we started talking. So, I mean, it really depends, because there have been instances where people do grab you and just help you, unwilling as it might be. And I think that that's what the difference is. I mean, I don't see.
Mm,
Um,
because if it's the only I don't know, it's interesting. This is why I have this show to talk about people's opinions about what's going on in the world because it's really interesting. The only exception to it where I would not be offended and where I might even accept the help is if there is a snowstorm or an ice storm and it's super, super, super icy and the surface of the road is like super slick and slippery. And someone says, "Here, may I help you cross so that you don't slip?" or something like that. If there's some severe physical obstacle in my path, then I would not be as offended. I might even allow the help at that point. If snow piles up, or if there's something dangerous in the road, or something like that, that's okay. But if it's just a normal day, then yeah, my opinion is sighted people need to go about their business. That's that's what I would. That's what I wouldn't go up to a sighted person and say, "Hey, can I help you cross the street?" Right?
well, if you saw that perhaps they were elderly and they were having trouble, maybe. I mean, I would think that it might. cross somebody's mind to do that. And so this